As I'm getting older, and now that I've shaved my face, I feel like I look like a skinny Bolvi from 13th Warrior. You know Bolvi if he didn't work out. So you're in the SCA and you're interested in having a Norse persona. Where do you start? In my opinion, you start by picking a time and a place like Hedeby, right? It's a really awesome trading town. We have tons of information from it. We have tons of physical artifacts and examples. It's in the southern tip of Denmark where Danes could sail anywhere across the Baltic. You could pick Trondheim in Norway or one of the Norwegian Sea Kings in Ireland, in Dublin, or the time around King Canute of the Danelaw, or maybe someone in Uppsala or Birka in Sweden heading through the Rus, or the Rus Kiev on the Rurik. There's so much. So my first take is to read as much as you can about Norse history. The Icelandic sagas are great. If you want, you can actually go to Icelandic Sagas database. You can just type it into Google. It's put up by the Icelandic government, so it's a .is. I think it's literally just Icelandic Saga database .is. And all of the Icelandic sagas are there, and most of them are translated into English. So you could read these 13th century, effectively historical fiction works on Norse culture, and you'll learn a ton. It's so great. And there's just so much history out there, and I like that kind of stuff because it gets you immersed in a time and a place. I got really interested in Njál's saga, which is where I started. I took the name Kari from Njál's saga. He was this early 11th century Viking warrior, late 10th, early 11th. Probably a Dane, if I recall. And he ended up traveling with Njál's sons after a banishment and going back to Iceland with them, and was the only survivor of this attack on Njál's family and the burnt Njál saga, and ended up killing all of the burners. And the leader of the family that did the burning, who had survived, the surviving soon-to-be leader was a man named Snorri the Wise, and he said, of all the people in Iceland who I most admire, Kari Salmunderson is the one I admire the greatest. And then Kari would marry his daughter and go on to create a new line. So a real coming full circle, if you will. So where do you start? You can start inspired by a story like that, like I did. And then I looked at Icelandic finds and found that there was not a lot there that I thought was cool. The Icelanders were, didn't have a lot of super awesome stuff. And by awesome, I mean the kind of armor and equipment and clothing that I was really attracted to were very Eastern. The Kievan Rus, or the even earlier pre-Viking Vendel, Sweden stuff. So that's where I ended up basing my personas around. I love the idea of Kari, in Iceland, but I love this stuff. So I knew I liked the Viking mythology, and I decided to start with Sweden around the Temple of Uppsala, which was the last great heathen temple. And from there, I went, Vendel, early Viking, with a Vendel Age helmet. Once I got into more of the Rus stuff, I thought, I could make a secondary persona and do a little bit later time period, like 9th century, 10th century, and do some Kievan Rus, Varangian Guard down in Miklagard. So that's how I started. As far as getting stuff together, garb, research heavily about how linen and wools work, and just Google as much as you can. Pinterest is also great. There's so many different sites and sources. Find your resident Laurel and reach out and talk to them about, if they're a Norse costuming Laurel, about what clothing they like, what was found. You can look at gravesite finds from some of those main places too, from those main finds, and kind of go down the research wormhole. And then, there's a lot of really cool forums on places here, like, on Facebook, like reenactor markets, like Burka and Hedeby marketplaces. Again, Etsy's probably the best single one-stop shop for good Viking stuff. Or of course you could meet someone and make it yourself, or you could buy something at a store locally. But in the SCA we tend to not really understand how things went together. Like we use these vibrant linens, even though linen doesn't take those kind of dyes and things like that. But you start where you start in the SCA, and if you really want to go down the wormhole, then do it. Another great example is armory. We all wear lamellar, right? But unless you were really an Eastern fighter in Byzantium or something of that nature, you didn't have lamellar. Yeah, there's a couple finds in Burka, but like that's probably not what most Vikings were wearing, which would have been like nothing, or maybe some kind of theoretical gambeson, like a padded caftan or a clap and rock coat, which look like little bathrobes. They're pretty cool. They kind of like wrap around the front, like that's pretty sweet. Or just a chainmail shirt, which would have been super expensive. So just kind of consider the costs of things and what status you're attempting to portray. And that's a good thing too, is what status are you attempting to portray? If you're a fighter, man, the average Viking had nothing. So you could get like really inexpensive, streamlined, hidden plastics that are light and just wear garb over it and get a very basic helm. Trade winds of the Levant have a lot of stuff. They're a Facebook sales company. They don't make the artistic kind of helmets that you see in a lot of SCA armors, like Not Wolf or Aesir, but they make reproductions of helmets that actually existed to the best of their ability. So that's a great starting point. Like the Guillerminbu is the only real Viking age Western helmet we have. It's like a very thin spagan this way and this way with a pair of wide ocular. And that's it. And you can wear mail underneath it with a bar grill. The Guillerminbu style that Tradewinds sells, Barina Calf makes them. He's an Indian armor. Has wraparound bar grill with the mail over it, so they're lightweight. They have great visibility and breathing. Make yourself a round shield. Don't put any gaudy heraldry on it. Keep your linens light dyed and like pale colors, and your wools rich. Get a good pair of boots. Boots by Bohemond is a great source for that, for inexpensive but really good boots. Use basket hilt, it's the SCA, or get some kind of really hardened leather gauntlets like Torvalder has Skaldic.com, makes leather gauntlets, or something like Quilted Armor has chainmail mitts. Maybe even Age of Craft has Brigandine mitts, which will work. There's other stuff too, obviously, but you could use a cross-hilt sword. Munitions grade arms. Master Eric makes some, or has some really